You know her face. You know her beauty. You know her as the most beautiful woman in the world. But behind the Hollywood image was a mind that saw the future. She helped pioneer an idea that would later become part of the long history of spread-spectrum communication. The same family of principles would eventually become important in technologies such as Bluetooth and other wireless systems. She never fought on a battlefield. She never fired a weapon. But during one of the darkest moments of history, she tried to use her imagination to help fight a war. And when she presented her invention, the world did not immediately see the genius behind it. They saw a famous actress. So who was she? And how did a Hollywood star, known mainly for her beauty, create an idea that would wait decades before the world understood its importance? Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler was born in Vienna in 1914. She was an only child. Her father was a banker, and her mother was a concert pianist. Her father encouraged her curiosity. During walks together, he explained how machines, streetcars, and everyday technology worked. From an early age, she was fascinated by the hidden mechanisms inside ordinary objects. She wanted to understand not just what things did, but why they worked. She had two remarkable qualities: beauty and curiosity. One would make her famous. The other would reveal the person the world almost failed to notice. At 18, she starred in a film called Ecstasy. The movie became one of the earliest and most controversial examples of sexuality in cinema. Audiences around the world reacted strongly. The film was condemned by religious leaders, restricted in several countries, and Hedy became known more for scandal than for talent. She became the Ecstasy Woman. She was admired for her appearance, but misunderstood as a person. That same year, she married Fritz Mandl. He was one of Austria's wealthiest arms manufacturers. He was 33. She was 19. Mandl tried to control her career, limited her public appearances, and attempted to separate her from acting. She lived surrounded by luxury, but it was also a life without freedom. A golden cage. But inside that cage, she was learning. At dinners with politicians, military officials, and weapons experts, she listened carefully. She absorbed conversations about military technology and weapons systems. She was not just watching the world around her. She was studying it. In 1937, she escaped Europe. She escaped the life that had trapped her, leaving behind Austria and the control of her husband. She traveled through Europe, eventually reaching London, where she searched for a new beginning. In London, she met Louis B. Mayer, the powerful head of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. He offered her a small contract, but she refused to accept being treated as just another actress. Then she made a bold decision. She booked passage on the same ship that Mayer was taking to America. During the journey, she introduced herself, talked with him, and convinced him that she was more than a beautiful face. By the time they reached New York, Mayer saw her potential and offered her a much better opportunity. She became Hedy Lamarr. Hollywood had created a new image for her. She was promoted as the most beautiful woman in the world. She starred in films such as Algiers, Boomtown, and Samson and Delilah. To millions of people, she was the mysterious Hollywood star, the glamorous woman who seemed to belong on a movie screen. But away from the cameras, another side of Hedy existed. She was fascinated by science, engineering, and invention. While waiting between scenes, she filled notebooks with ideas. She imagined new products, explored improvements to everyday technology, and constantly searched for ways to solve problems. Hollywood saw an actress, but inside that image was an inventor. She once said, "Any girl can be glamorous. All you have to do is stand still and look stupid." She understood that beauty could attract attention, but she also knew beauty could hide intelligence. And soon, the world would face a war that would give her ideas a new purpose. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor. America entered World War II. The conflict changed the lives of millions, and Hetty watched the destruction unfold. She wanted to contribute to the Allied effort. She knew she could not fight with a weapon, but she believed she could help with an idea. She met George Antheil. He was a composer, known for his experimental music and his work with player pianos. Player pianos used rolls of paper with patterns of holes. Those patterns controlled which notes played and when they played. Hetty looked at the system. She looked at the problem of controlling torpedoes. And she asked a simple question. What if a signal could change constantly, so an enemy could not easily follow it? The idea was frequency hopping. A transmitter and a receiver would follow the same changing pattern. The signal would move from one frequency to another, following a sequence known only to both sides. The signal would not stay in one place. It would jump. It would move. It would disappear and return, making it much harder to detect or interfere with. In 1942, Hedy Lamarr and George Antheil received U.S. patent number 2,292,387. Her name appeared on the patent as Hetty Keesler Markey. She used her married name, partly because she worried people might dismiss the invention, because it came from a Hollywood actress. She presented the idea to the U.S. Navy. The Navy recognized its potential, but the technology was not used during World War II. The concept was ahead of the available technology, and the military had other wartime priorities. Instead, Hetty contributed to the war effort by helping sell war bonds. She helped raise millions of dollars in support of the Allied cause. But her invention remained largely unnoticed. The idea existed. The patent existed. But the world was not ready for it yet. The war ended, and Hetty returned to the world she knew. But Hollywood was changing. The opportunities that once surrounded her began to disappear. She was no longer the young star the studios wanted to promote. Behind the glamorous image was a woman searching for meaning beyond fame. She married 6 times, divorced 6 times, and had 3 children. In 1966, she published her autobiography, Ecstasy and Me. The book became controversial, and many details were disputed by Hetty herself and others who knew her life. She later challenged parts of the book, but the legal battle did not restore the image she had lost. As the years passed, she became increasingly private. She lived away from the spotlight, rarely appearing in public, and spending much of her time away from Hollywood. The woman once called the most beautiful woman in the world had become almost invisible. But while the world forgot the person behind the invention, technology continued moving forward. Researchers and engineers explored spread-spectrum communication. The principles behind frequency hopping became valuable in secure communications, military systems, and later wireless technologies. Decades after Hetty and Antheil created their patent, the idea of rapidly changing frequencies became part of a much larger technological evolution. Modern wireless communication was not created by one person or one invention. It was built through generations of discoveries and innovations. But Hedy Lamarr's idea had been one early step in that journey. For years, almost no one knew her name. Then, slowly, history began to look back. In 1997, the phone rang. It was the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They were honoring Hedy Lamarr for her contributions related to spread-spectrum communication. She was 82 years old. More than 50 years had passed since she had first patented the idea. For decades, she had been remembered mainly for her appearance. Now, the world was finally recognizing her mind. She reportedly said, Finally someone admitted I had a brain." It was a moment of recognition that came far later than it should have. 3 years later, on January 19, 2000, Hedy Lamarr died at the age of 85. She died before seeing how deeply wireless technology would transform everyday life. She never saw billions of people carrying devices connected through invisible signals. She never saw how ideas related to frequency control would become part of the modern world. But history remembered. Not because she was a movie star. Not because she was considered beautiful. But because she imagined something before the world was ready to understand it. I began with a question. Who was the woman behind one of the ideas that helped shape the wireless world? Now you know. But maybe the bigger question is this. How many brilliant ideas have been overlooked? Because people judged the person before they understood the idea? How many inventors were ignored because they did not fit the image of what a genius was supposed to look like? Hedy Lamarr was beautiful. She was famous. She was a Hollywood star. But she was also a thinker, a problem solver, an inventor. Her invention did not instantly change the world. It waited for technology to catch up. And that may be the most fascinating part of her story. Sometimes an idea can be ahead of its time. Sometimes the world needs decades before it understands the person who created it. Hedy Lamarr never commanded an army. She never led a laboratory. She never stood on a battlefield. But she looked at a problem, imagined a solution, and created an idea that became part of the long history of modern communication. The world called her beautiful. The world called her controversial. For many years, the world simply forgot her. But behind the actress was an inventor. Behind the fame was a curious mind. And behind the image everyone saw was a woman who refused to stop thinking. She was Hedy Lamarr. The woman who refused to stand still. The woman who imagined a signal that would never stop moving. The frequency that never stopped hopping.
She wore the light of 1,000 screens, but kept a note per hand. In gilded rooms she learned machines, curiosity like maps of beauty drew the cameras close. Curiosity drew the mind between the scenes and whispered prose. She sketched the way the signals went. She watched the world in secret rooms, listened to the clocks and guns, turned the circles of the piano's tunes into patterns where the signal runs. She asked, what if the song could fly from one bright thread to the next? A sickle dancing, sliding by a secret code that would perplex. So she taught the signal how to dance, a melody that could not be chained, a hidden step, a daring chance, a pulse that hopped and then remained. Years passed in hush and twilight rooms. The fame would fade, the credit hide, but echoes live in quieter tunes. Decades later, a voice would say, at last, you had a brain. The world turned back the hidden way and found the light beyond the fame. Now listen, signals cross the night, a chorus of invisible streams. Her idea keeps the dark in flight, a quiet thread inside our dreams. She was more than face and film and gold, a thinker, restless, bright and brave. The frequency she taught to fold keeps weaving through worlds she gave. The final chord is not goodbye,